1.6 million are Windows Phone 7. I think, if going off the top of my head, I think that was roughly about right, which is pretty diabolical, really. Considering
lots of them are actually. We mentioned this before. I just want to stress about 80,000 of them are Microsoft employees. So if you put percentage of that, it's just like quite a lot of the people who are actually using Windows on phones are Microsoft employees. And I think they had a deal with Dell, so it would be like some Dell employees as well.
Now, staying on the subject of Microsoft, we have news about Steve Ballmer having a conference in China recently and trying to explain away the, I won't say poor results, because certainly the money involved here is a lot more than I would ever have contact with, but it's explaining the poor performance in China. And Steve Ballmer has been blaming piracy as the root cause of all evil. Now, that in itself isn't too much of a surprise, because all throughout Hollywood and the music industry, piracy, the P word, is always used to demonize file sharing, but also to make an excuse for poor sales.
Yeah.
What was interesting about Ballmer's comment there was it wasn't very long ago, and you might have to remind me about the year, Roy, if you can remember this, but I remember Bill Gates making a comment about piracy and how it was.
He made several of them. I can maybe tell you the year if you tell me which comment it was. Yeah.
I was referring to the comment, I believe it was about China, actually, and it was that if they're going to steal it, let them steal it from us, or this is towards the effect of this. If they're going to steal it, let them steal it from us. We'll work out how to collect 10 years later, or something. It's words to those effects.
Yeah, he said it in one of the universities, I believe, around, I think it was 2003. But he made some more interesting remarks later, and I think it was in Forbes with Fitzpatrick, 2007. His words actually include the L word, the Linux word, I believe. So he said something to the effect that it's better if we sell Windows than to basically crack down on them and then use Linux, which is exactly what happens in China. And this is something I've been predicting, it's very easy. I'm not taking credit for it because other people probably said the same. But a few years back, when the figures associated with Windows profits or revenue, not exactly the same thing, but were still kind of doing okay, the company wasn't really in need of complaining too much about so-called piracy. And I said as soon as it starts going down, which it has for the past, think about a year and a half now, it's been going down. You have to look closely to see that. It's the same with the Office to a certain extent, which basically means both the cash cows. When it starts going down, they will start to blame the people who are using it without paying, which Microsoft was always very happy with, and also some quotes about it from, I think it was from Craig Mundy from Microsoft. But they repeatedly, and I've been collecting all sorts of quotes, where they validate the allegation that they enjoy, and internally they actually strategize for, they actually would think about how do we make people get it for free. So as far as I can tell, if I was Microsoft and if I was in the boardroom, it wouldn't be outrageous for me to say we should go to torrent sites and give them copies of Windows, especially torrents, because these are people who won't be buying it anyway, and try and give them copies of Windows 7. I call it Vista 7. It's just pretty much the same. So giving them copies, not of Vista. By the way, they go after people who are selling the versions of Windows which aren't the current ones. So if you're selling in China now Windows XP, be very careful because they'll go after you because they don't want people to use XP now. They want to encourage people to go into so-called, to become so-called pirates of Windows 7 because they want to increase the figures of number of users that use this operating system. So it would make sense for them, and it wouldn't be an outrageous suggestion in the boardroom for someone to go into, just as some movie companies are doing, to try and squeeze illegal copies for promotion purposes. Mm. So this is what they've been doing in China. And of course, when they say something like, well, we're losing revenue, and it's the same type of propaganda you see from the MPAA and RAA, when they say lost revenue, they don't exactly mean lost revenue. They mean that if people were willing to pay, not if people actually pay, but people were willing to pay for the software, we could make money, but these people would not be willing to pay, and they are just trying to block the competition. So this is always very funny when they say that. And I thought about writing an article about it, but I just did a very quick dent about it. The reason being, I just wrote about it so many times, I think people would get bored if you just make the same arguments. I just point them to prior examples and things that I covered, and lots of quotes. It would be interesting if we did a special show where we just go through some quotes and just really make a very compelling case to tell people, look, these people are admitting repeatedly they enjoy the sharing of their software in the same way that we enjoy the sharing of Linux. But they are like closet sharers, they actually like sharing, the software for free, but they have to pretend that they don't do that. That we're like the evil one, we're the communism, but everyone using Windows and being the same, that's not communism at all.
Well, to round off that topic, I'd like to leave it with this. And this is a comment from 2007, reportedly, from Steve Ballmer. And this is what he has to say about the iPhones. This is 2007. There is no chance that the iPhone is going to get any significant market share. No chance. Again, a very typical statement for me.
But maybe he's right, because Android's doing extremely well now. It's up there, and Microsoft is making money out of that.
I would suggest that whatever the figures for the iPhone are, they are relatively significant, and certainly more significant than their own platform of Windows Phone 7. But as you say, if they're making money off Android, who needs a platform of their own, because they can just go around all the phone manufacturers and apply their tax to them as well.
You could go back and look at what he said about Vista. You could go back, and I could give you. I remember the quotes, but not exactly. I could look them up now. The Zune, I can remember him calling the Zune a funny product because they weren't making money on that. We by the way, for those who don't know, the Zune is dead now. They pretty much shut it down. And the Xbox, did you hear about the last person who was one of the founding people and one of the key people in the Xbox team has just left the company as well. So that's the end of an era for the Xbox, because it's doing, I would tell you that based on what I've been reading, it's not doing well. It's just, it's really kind of dry, and you don't hear of any, since the Kinect thing and the departure of Robert Bach, and then there was the, what's his first name? J. Allard. I think it's not John. Usually goes by J anyway. They both left. They were the vice presidents or presidents of these. One of them was president of this division. So he doesn't look too promising for the hardware business.
I mean, you're forgetting though, Roy, as promoted by the advocates, that it's sold the Kinect, and that's the fastest selling piece of hardware in the universe.
How much did they spend on marketing? No, I'm serious. Because I understand they spent something like $500 million.
To be fair to them, though,
yeah.
I've seen very little advertising for the Kinect. I mean, I don't watch a lot of television.
I read the news, and I saw lots of fake news or PR. I saw a hell of a lot. But I tracked the news, and they really pushed a lot of stuff. I don't read Japanese news, but I can tell you that you wouldn't know that Sony really had a controller if you were to read the English news. It's just like it didn't exist. And the Kinect was just everywhere. And by the way, there is news now about the Kinect driver moving into the Linux kernel, which some people say, oh, that's like Linux embracing Microsoft. It's just a bunch of device drivers because it's available. So some people who might be interested in, using this thing on Linux, I guess they could, but nothing too major. And I don't think they can ever sell too many of them, because you need an Xbox to start with. So if they sold, let's say, 10 million so far, I mean, what can they sell from now on? I mean, they're not looking at potential of 500 million people buying this thing, because there is a prerequisite. They have to have something else first. So yeah, I don't know if they'll actually be profitable. They will pretend they are, but they actually have debt now, and they just bought Skype. They might have to get some more money from overseas or to borrow some money. And Ballmer is being pressured to step down. I suppose we could mention that as well.
Yeah, why not? We'll mention that as well, because there's been a few articles on that. I'll have to look on my RSS feed to drag one of those up. But yeah, if you have an article in front of you, you want to have a quick chat about it.
It's one of the hedge managers who was calling for the resignation or the firing, I suppose, of Steve Ballmer, which it's funny because it basically tells you people aren't too happy. And I've been seeing lots of articles recently shared them about shareholders suggesting the company's not doing well. In fact, if you look at the stock, they did pretty poorly since the beginning of the year. But I'm not extremely interested in seeing Steve Ballmer stepping down, except for the fact that it would indicate that things are rotten from the inside to the extent that all the managers are leaving. And by the way, more of them have left, but I don't think we have reason to talk about this because it's just names of people. You know, this person stepped down, this person stepped down. The only people left in the company, as I put it, I don't really know how to pronounce his last name. But it's the guy who's was promoted to senior vice president. He's the person who's doing the patent extortion for the company, so he's been promoted to one of the highest positions now because Microsoft is becoming a patent extortion company. There is Ballmer staying, and there is Monday, who's mostly lobbying and going to like Bilderberg meetings and stuff like that for Microsoft. So, and everybody else pretty much left. You know, I cannot think of any major name and people who were used to be veterans with the Windows teams who stayed in the company. So, Ballmer stays in there, and he really knows how to alienate people from the Apple world and Linux and stuff. So I'm quite interested in him staying for now, because I think if he left, there would be a sort of a new face to the company, and it would be easier for them to say, look, there is the new Microsoft, and there is the new leader, and I don't think it would be too useful if they did that.
Well, one of the topics that I hope we can round off on, because over in the UK, I don't know what time people will listen to this show, but over in the UK at the moment, it's 12 minutes past 11 in the evening. So we're going to sort of come to a conclusion very shortly and hopefully do another show over the weekend when Rusty will be coming and joining us. So what I thought for the final topic was that we'll have a look, go back to Skype and re-examine a couple of the issues there, because Skype's been in the news recently with a major flaw over the last few days. I believe that some users couldn't log on, and there was an update announced apparently for Windows and Mac users, and much to the amusement of many Linux users, there was no Linux update. Roy, as I've said that piece, you get the first chance to say what you think.
Yeah, right. I personally don't log into Skype anymore. I'm unavailable and sleep basically 24 hours a day. But I read about the outage, and it just reminded me of 2007 when Windows Update kicked in and booted many of the machines at the same time, and basically Skype crashed, and I think it wasn't working for at least a day, maybe 3 days. That the whole system was down. People could make phone calls, and all this caused because not because of all the platforms or the clients. It's just because of the Windows element in their system and the dependency on Windows serving as a botnet, basically. Because Skype, the way it works, and the reason it might work well for quite a few people is because it takes over the network, and it does all kinds of things. If you know network engineering, I suppose it makes more sense, and to me it never quite made sense. But they use people as nodes to hop between different attendants of a conversation. So they basically hijack people's machine to use them as super nodes and to use them as a route to another machine. And if all of these nodes fall down at the same time to reboot, then you don't really have any nodes to go through. So the whole assumption that you'll always have some people logged in and being exploited as a routing point basically collapses and breaks. So Skype couldn't even start because people did not have enough nodes to kind of get the botnet going. And once it goes down, this is the type of thing that happens. And it's interesting because there is this joke going around, and especially in the IRC channel I'm running with some people, that the biggest two botnets are Skype and Windows Update. Because when they go off, they manage a lot of traffic, and they take advantage of people's computers, and they take a lot of control of the network at the same time when they decide to do so. And this is the joining of Microsoft and Skype is already quite an interesting affair, because Microsoft is now one of the biggest sort of botnet herder, I suppose you could call them. Not just the criminals who are exploiting holes in Windows and just grabbing computers by the millions and kind of using them to send spam or whatever. So that's what I had to say. So if the system crashed, as you mentioned, and you say that there was a flaw in Skype, or
Well, what it was, from my brief, because I've been very busy over the last few days, so of course this all occurred when I wasn't actually online. There's some issue with the shared.xml file. I'm just reading down here from a BBC News article, which probably isn't the best place to refer to. What I'm trying to look for, there was a comment made in respect of the updates. There was advice given for Linux users, and I don't know, I presume you haven't read this, Roy, but it was along the lines of, Linux users are advanced so that they can it was something along the lines of the update or the fix for the Linux users is not as simple, but Linux users can deal with it because they're more advanced users or something like that. It was words to that effect, and I'm desperately trying to find this because it would be excellent for the show notes, because it was a very sort of double-edged compliment, for want of a better word, because not only were they able to
there is an element of truth in that, though.
Yes,
the implication, I'll tell you, there is the implication of
the implication
that you could not use Linux if you weren't advanced,
yes.
But there is the fact that a lot of advanced users are using Linux. Now, from this, you can actually take it as a compliment, and people who know their way, and people who actually know their choices and know how to choose, actually choose Linux. People who don't know anything about computers will just choose something else.
And the vast majority of people who use Skype will see that and see advanced users and the word Linux and make a mental reference for future reference. So I didn't like that comment at all, but I can't find it to hand to quote it exactly, which is a shame. Anyway, it seems to be all solved now, and everything's back up and running. But just a few questions on the Skype issue. Obviously, my take on the whole Skype situation using SIP client would be that I would accommodate whatever guest we had on and their preferred method of communication.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. And I think that it's certainly, at the present time, until the service of Skype changes considerably into something completely different, I would certainly have no hesitation using Skype, just because it's a Microsoft product now that they've acquired. For me personally, it doesn't actually change anything at all. I still do what we've always done for the show, and if our guest only wants to use Skype, then fine, we'll accommodate that because they're good enough to come on the show, and obviously we want to make it as easy for them as possible. But what's just a very brief question, and sorry, feedback, Roy. What's your opinion of the Skype product since Microsoft has acquired it?
I don't think they've acquired it so far. I don't think they've signed the papers.
No, well, yeah, it's all that's in the side.
One of the things you know, though, is we haven't covered this yet. The asterisk situation. Just shortly after they agree to be acquired, but it's a done deal, I suppose, formally yet. Maybe it is, but what happened was, on a prospective basis, one of the open source products and one of the bridges for Skype to work with other networks and to interoperate is breaking down. So a announcement came from I believe the developers of the bridge between Asterisk have a very popular VoIP-based solution, and also a bridge is supposed to SIP in some way, to SIP. That's been broken down, and you can be sure it has something to do with the Microsoft acquisition, and I believe Skype is trying to distance Microsoft from it and say, oh, it's nothing to do with Microsoft, but it's really hard to believe that just incidentally, because it just happens to be at the same time, especially after they actually built a relationship with an open source provider. So it seems very clear that Microsoft has different plans for Skype and isn't too interested in other people getting access to the platform or actually accommodating something that's based on standards, which is a shame. And it comes at a time when the European Commission looks at Microsoft's exclusion of competing vendors, exclusion and avoidance of standards, deviations from standards, shutting down competitors, and they should really look carefully at what happened here, because this is Microsoft possibly impacting people's communication. Not servers communication, but actually communication among peers, among families, and trying to press them to buy Windows to just interoperate as individuals, as people. And then that kind of disturbed me a bit, but and also one of the open source, among the exodus at Microsoft, one of the main, or kind of one of the groomed up developers at Microsoft was like a so-called open source developer. I can imagine he was using some framework to do with Microsoft. He's leaving the company, and he's basically given a very damning admission that the company is a really bad place for not nurturing or fostering open source development, which is a good thing to hear, because that just confirms the company is just basically playing PR and it isn't really too serious about changing its ways and its core business model.
Well, considering the time and the lateness of the evening, hopefully, like I say, we'll have Rusty tomorrow. Now, I believe, Roy, you have the ending track to see us out, but before that I'll just do my normal roundup, and that's thank you everybody for listening to the show. It's greatly appreciated. Your feedback is greatly appreciated, including your insults. I do enjoy reading those. Bytes Media at bytesmedia.co.uk if you want to send an email, or on mine or Roy's respective sites. Hopefully we'll have another show in the next couple of days when Rusty, our friend from America, is going to be on and giving his unique views into the subjects we're covering here. And if you have any suggestions for the show, please by all means write or email or tweet us, and we'll try to accommodate them as best we can. So Roy, I'll put it over to you, and till next time everybody, thank you very much for downloading. I'll speak to you later.
The track is it's called 1977.
1970, 1970, 1970, 1970. Nací un día de junio del año 77, planeta Mercurio y el año de la serpiente. Signo patente tatuado y en mi frente que en el vientre de mi madre marcaba el paso siguiente. Nacer, llorar sin anestesia en la camilla. Mi padre solo dijo es Ana María. Sí, sería el primer llanto que me probaría, que mandó las heridas y dándome la batería. Solía ser entonces como un libro abierto, pero leí la letra pequeña del texto, como un arquitecto construyendo cada efecto. Correcto, incorrecto, se aprende todo al respecto. Saber que algunas personas quieren el daño, subir peldaño toma tiempo, toma año. Con mi peluche mirando lo cotidiano, dibujos transformaban el invierno en gran verano. Papá me regaló bajo mi insistencia un juego que trataba de compartir la solvencia, pero en el patio hicieron la competencia. Fue cuando sentí mi primera impotencia. 1970, 1970, 1970, 1977. No me digan no, que no lo presiento. Todo lo que cambia lo hará diferente en el año que nació la sepia. 1977. No me digan no, que no lo presiento. Todo lo que cambia lo hará diferente en el año que nació la sepia. Mi adolescencia fue una etapa bizarra. El cuerpo es batería y la cabeza guitarra. La orquesta narra una tonada quebrada para la mirada de una niña que solo talla espada. Hormona disparada, sobrepobladas, información que cambian temporadas, caminas encrucijada. Cada cual en su morada preparaba la carnada, la sagrada diablada de mirada encabronada. Mi fila la verdad nunca buscó su silla. Mi búsqueda fue mero proceso de pura pila. Pupila de poeta que marcó nuestra saliva en la cordillera que miraba la salida. La parada militar de paso monótono, colores policromo, los uniformes de poco tono. De tono mi cuestionamiento, la voz y sonó, no. Mi primera rima que sonó y me enroló. Mi búsqueda no fue para mi cosa de escenario, fue algo necesario y que marcaba ya mi fallo. Así que tú hablas más de lo necesario. Fue cuando entendí que todos quieren ser corsario. 1970, 1970,